at 1,025 pounds. So he started working with me and my son, and I had a goal to get down to basically the 275 pound mark and bench 500 pounds in a suit. So what happened was he actually changed my diet, and 4 to 5 times a week we'd go on Skype and I'd video everything I was doing in the gym. And he just literally kicked my ass like hard, especially with the cardio and stuff like that. But he changed my diet and introduced things like steel cut oats and stuff like in my food group. And what do you think happened? My weight loss stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But see,
Yeah,
that's
and
the
that's
whole
why I
point.
don't understand why so many people in that community, you know, especially like the big exercise community, the gym people, why they still think that. Like, they've had so much experience with this over the years, and they still all think that, you know, calories in equals calories out. You know, it's wild to me.
Mhm.
Well,
I get comments on my channel all the time, people telling me you need to eat more, you need to eat less, and it's like that's still such a prevalent idea that people have.
well, what it is you're in control of your own body. So, and I know this time I've been doing all this stuff. I've been neglectful of this, but you really need to document everything you're doing. If there's a goal is actually weight loss, or is your goal actually being healthier, right? So you don't really have to get technically too into too much to know that if you're having a high glycemic index carbs in your diet, that you're going to store fat. I mean, it's just simple. And also you can get into things like, okay, how am I eating my meals? The order am I eating my meals, or the order of the foods in my meals that I'm eating? Are you ensuring that you got enough fat and protein in that meal to actually slow down the absorption of your carbohydrates, right? So um, I think it breaks right down to, it was at the eicosanoid level of insulin, the actual pre-hormonal level of it, right? So there's a lot of things to it that get really quite technical. And I was watching one of his videos the other day, and he was going over a study in Japan where, because they eat a lot of high glycemic index carbs with rice, right? And they couldn't figure out why people weren't gaining weight or becoming obese. Well, the reason being is because they eat a lot of pickled food. There's a lot of vinegar, right, mixed with their rice and their food with every meal. And it was slowing the absorption rate by, I think it was about 50%. So it's controlling your insulin spikes, right? So there's a lot of things to it. And again, everybody's different, right? So if it's, I don't know. I think sometimes there's a little bit too much of an emphasis on studies on what things work, because you may not actually fit in that category.
That is true. However, the whole prevalent theory about the calories in, calories out, and you have to exercise, that it's a matter of self control and gluttony. When you have a study like this that shows that that premise cannot be true, even though there's all these individuals that are in the study. So you would have outliers, as you do with anything. You can't pigeonhole everybody. However, it's like when they make the blanket statement about, yeah, it's calories in, calories out, all you have to do is just use more than you consume. Well, this study just proves that that isn't true.
Mm.
So it's not, we're not talking about you versus me versus Ellie. You know, it's not that. It's in general as a rule.
Yeah.
The whole premise about the calories in, calories out is not valid, as that study showed.
Yeah.
No, that's true. But the thing is, if you're consuming bad calories, right, is basically what it is. If you're consuming shit food, you're going to have issues.
Well, it was
It's-
basically, but what this study was doing was mimicking what the guidelines say are healthy foods. Now you got to remember that that's them's fighting words for some people, because what we eat is considered very unhealthy to the vast majority of people out there, and certainly to the governing bodies. So according to this study, what the governing bodies say is healthy, which is carby, low fat food, is not healthy. It does not promote weight loss. And the whole calories in, calories out thing is debunked. I mean, that's what that study says.
Yeah. I think there were like 3 different studies in there that basically
Yeah.
all led to the same thing. And I don't think that was the result they were looking for, considering one of the people that did the studies was Ansel Keys. And we all know
Yes.
about him.
Womp
I
womp.
bet. I'm surprised he didn't just change some data around and make it say whatever he wanted it to say.
Oh no, he learned from that mistake. This was before the whole 7 countries and all of that. So he was like, oh, okay, now I know what I need to do in the
Yeah.
future.
In the future, we'll just not do science.
Yeah.
We'll just make it say whatever we want it to say.
Yeah, we'll just go to countries during their Lent and then say that they don't actually eat meat.
I think it's hard. It's got to be really hard to compile a good dietary study, because of the variables there's so many variables, not just within each individual's body, but what are they actually eating? I mean, I guess unless you give them their actual food and their portions, and even how you cook it is going to make a difference in what nutrients you're getting. So it's got to be really difficult to actually have a really good dietary study. I mean,
And that
That's
kind of
true,
goes to
because
what Bubba's saying too, you know, like we just can't pay attention to the studies. Like it's great that these studies go along with what we think and that he's using these as examples, but when it comes right down to it, the dietary studies are just not that great.
now, wasn't there one that in here that I don't remember the page they did with inmates?
Oh yeah, I was just
yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
That one might be a little easier to control
yeah.
because
A
they're
lot
getting
easier.
fed,
Yeah.
and they can control their every, all their movement and stuff. But, yeah, but what that person did to their body and what condition their body was in up to the point of incarceration is still going to impact how how their body responds to different foods.
Well, you want to know about diets about inmates?
Yes.
What?
I worked in corrections for 9 years, and I saw lots of people come in, whether they're addicted to meth or coke or heroin or uh, you name it. A lot of guys coming in, and all of a sudden they'd be gaining weight, and the food they ate was actual garbage. High fat, high carbohydrates. The stuff they got on canteens was really garbage. It's quite amazing how resilient some of them were. But what they would do is they'd stockpile things like eggs and oatmeal and fruits and things like that. And you give a body a little bit of nutrition, it goes a long way, even if it's the wrong stuff. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, it's better for them than the heroin or the cocaine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but basically, when somebody goes on a run on when they're suffering from substances like that, they just stop consuming food,
Right.
right? And then someone who's say suffering from alcohol issues, they've stopped consuming food, but they're actually getting an excessive amount of sugar in the alcohol that they're drinking, along with the actual alcohol itself, which is causing issues with like fatty liver tissue and stuff, right? So, and not only that, then you've got so many people that are, they've got tuberculosis, have A, B, C, HIV. There's all sorts of things that are going on with those guys as far as their health goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
a lot of them are really a lot younger too. I feel like they, their metabolisms are probably a lot faster to begin with.
the only, it's not my experience, but my husband, he worked at a jail for a couple of years, and he actually worked in the kitchen with the inmates, so it wasn't prison, but and I like help, they would come in and they would be able to make meals in order to get some time off of their, work it off, get some time off of their sentences. And I remember my husband and also our roommate worked, they both worked there, and they would come home and they would just like be shaking their heads talking about the food, and the way they described it was like comparable to like dog food. Like it would come in these vats, and it was just a lot of processed foods, muffins and cookies and oatmeal. But it's just, that was something that I remembered. So they're definitely not eating that great, at least where I am.
Yeah.
Actually, the food as far as the institutions up here compared to the States is far better because we don't have this for profit thing happening with institutions, right?
Mhm.
Like there is a budget, but there's also a minimum standard in the companies that run the kitchen. They have to abide by that. That's just it's a simple fact, right?
Yeah.
So I think we should tie back to the book. So with the prisoners, what they were trying to do was they were doing the overfeeding experiments. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Which page was that, Ellie?
Yeah, which I was trying to find.
58 and 59. Yeah, they were saying the hypothesis that eating too much causes obesity is easily testable. Dr. Ethan Sims, that's a little dark for me. He would force mice to gain. He would try to force mice to gain weight. Despite ample food, the mice ate only enough to be full. No inducement could get them to eat. They would not become obese. Force feeding the mice caused an increase in their metabolism, so once again, no weight was gained. Um, he asked a brilliant question: could he make humans deliberately gain weight? This question, so deceptively simple, had never been experimentally answered. After all, we already thought we knew the answer. Of course, it would lead to it. But, and then that's where they tried to. So they had prisoners eat about 4,000 calories, and physical activity was strictly controlled. Their weight initially rose then stabilized. At first, they had been happy to increase their caloric intake. As their weight started to increase, they found it more and more difficult to overeat, and some dropped out of the study. Some were eating upwards of 10,000 calories per day.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I could not imagine eating that much. And they eventually gained 20% to 25% of their original body weight, actually much less than caloric theory predicted. So, what do you think about that?
It just proves that the energy expenditure raises to go along with the caloric intake. Your body wants to reach an equilibrium. It wants to reach homeostasis. That $4 word we learned back in first grade, second grade. I don't know.
It's
But
the
yeah,
opposite of that semi-starvation study where people, all they could think about was food when they weren't getting enough, whereas these people were getting too much and they were like didn't want the food anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me wonder if this is why, the steak and butter gal.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if this is why their whole little theory that they have about priming works, because we are so, like, most of us women have just been nutritionally like starving ourselves for years. And so it's almost like you have to get back up to that point to where you're like, okay, this is where you're supposed to be before your body will say, oh, okay, relax and let go of a little bit. It's starting to make more
Mhm.
sense to me. I like to theorize about stuff and, just apply it to myself. And
Mhm.
that makes sense to me.
Well, I know that when I used to really restrict like crazy, um, then when I was done, I wouldn't turn to good food. I'd go pig out on the bad stuff.
Oh, yeah,
So
for sure.
it'd be interesting to see what our bodies would do if we, after being really restrictive, if we actually turned to some really good quality food. Because I know that I'm sure I completely messed myself up. In my 20s, I was eating like for a period of time, I was eating like somewhere between 500 and 800 calories a day.
Oh, my
Because,
goodness.
well, I'd gotten
Oh,
PCOS and I was gaining lots of weight. And even with that, I wasn't really losing weight. And, um, then when I quit eating like that, I was eating garbage. So, the weight just kept piling on. So, I wish I had known then what I know now.
And that all
well,
ties back to the fact that, weight loss or weight gain is tightly regulated by hormones.
mhm, mhm. And think
Yeah.
about this with appetite too. Like
Yeah.
if you deprive yourself, or like let's pretend that you're invited to dinner, and it's going to be a fabulous dinner, and or at least I know that what I would do is like I would save up, so to speak, so I wouldn't eat anything that day, so that I would be really hungry for that good meal that I was going to have that evening. So and then I guess what I'm trying to say is that the body doesn't, um it's like you would think that if you were just able to control it yourself without these urges and everything, but your body knows that you're hungry, you hadn't eaten anything that day, and you need some nutrition, and so you're hungry for that, and that's just not something that the average person can really, especially if you just do this over and over, you're not going to be able to control it. And that leads back, of course, to the thing about going back and eating other things, and then you'll eat whatever is there. If you've got cookies, you'll eat that. If you just whatever is there, you might even hop in the car and go get something. So,
Yeah, it's interesting too, though, because I know that, we can turn off our hunger signal if we just write it out. It takes what, about an hour? I
mm-hmm.
think if you're hungry and you just ignore it, after about an hour, you won't feel hungry anymore.
I don't even think it's an hour. I felt
Is
like
it
it
like,
was a shorter period. Like, I
is
thought
it?
it was like 15 or 20 minutes or something. Do you all remember that?
And I'm wondering
I
if
don't
that's
remember where I saw
individual
that, but
too. I want if that might be
yeah,
individual,
true, true.
but it's
Okay.
interesting that we can actually ignore our signals, which is a hormonal signal. We can ignore it and it'll go away.
Yeah.
So,
Um, okay, so I want to kind of go back to chapter 4 because we kind of skipped ahead a little bit. But chapter 4, the headings basically were the exercise myth. Basically, that was where increased exercise did not translate to lower rates of obesity. Several areas, including Kentucky, where I live, increased their rates by Herculean efforts in recent years, but had not reduced obesity at all. Whether physical activity increases or decreases, there was virtually no relationship to the rates of obesity, and including childhood obesity, which is interesting considering everyone's always saying, oh, yeah, the kids are so obese now because they're playing video games all day and they're not outside running around. And, I bought into that too.
We all
But
did.
it says the lack of exercise is not the cause of the obesity epidemic. And then calories out. There was a part there that I was wanting either me or somebody to read aloud just because it was, let me see, just because it was kind of a lot to write down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
if
can
you don't
read it.
care.
Okay.
Mainly just those, the factors, where it says basal metabolic rate depends on many
Got it.
factors.
Okay. Basal metabolic rate depends on many factors, including genetics, gender. Basal metabolic rate is generally higher in men, age, Basal metabolic rate is generally dropping with age. Weight, basal metabolic rate generally increases with muscle mass. Height, basal metabolic rate generally increases with height. Diet, overfeeding or underfeeding. Body temperature, external temperature, heating or cooling of the body, and order function. So you want me? I can continue if you want me to.
I was just going to add that total energy expenditure is not the same as exercise, which we had mentioned before, and
Mm-hmm.
that the moderate walking was noted. 45 minutes a day wouldn't even equal 5% of the basal metabolic rate. So
Right.
that shows you, like, you can't just, we've probably all had those friends that are like, oh, I can eat anything, I'm an aerobics teacher. That's not actually true. It's probably a lot your genetics and
Mm-hmm.
lots of different other factors that are in there too.
Hey,
Well,
Nicole.
Well, when
Hey,
you think about
Nicole.
the kids, hey Nicole, you think about the kids, it's probably more that they're snacking while they're home. I know when I was a kid and there was no video games and hardly anything at all on TV. I mean, we were out playing and stuff, and we weren't eating.
No, we were not.
We had. I mean, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she cooked 3 meals a day, and
Yep.
she controlled all my intake. And in between we were out playing. And so maybe it's not that we were playing, it's that we weren't snacking.
So I think a lot of it's genetics too, because as great as my mom is and was, I did not eat 3 meals a day at home, and they weren't always home cooked and all that stuff. We ate a lot. My mom worked till really late in the evening, and she worked about 45 minutes away from where we lived. So, you know, not criticizing her in any way, but we would get frequently, KFC, tacos. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah, of course.
Just whatever. But then when she would cook at home, she would always make sure that she had, the vegetables and everything. She tried to, you know, she did like the rest of us moms. She did, what she could. And I mean, it was just fine to me. And, I was super skinny as a kid. Like I would just kind of peck at food half the time. I really didn't even have much of an appetite. And then I would just run around like crazy. So I think a lot of it for me it seems to be genetics, because I
Mhm.
did the same things that my best friend did, but she was quite overweight. So it's just so complicated.
It's weird because it was kind of the opposite in our family, because my parents were very, very small, thin. I mean, they were older, they grew up in the Depression era, but they were very, very slender. And then my older sister was a really chubby child. My brother was slender, and I was more slender as a child, but my sister, there was something off with her. And then we all ended up being, inclined to gain weight as we got older, which is probably lifestyle. But it's really weird that you can have like 3 siblings and one of them's chunky and the other 2 are lean, and lean parents. I'm not sure what happened
Yeah.
to her.
Well, we can all get different genes too. I mean, I've got mostly regular height, and then I have one son that's just like really tall, and we're all super short. So
Yeah.
I had done one of those, and I don't know how valid it is, but I had done one of those.
Oh,
Like
hey,
I did
Nicole.
my. Oh, hey, Nicole.
She
I
said hi.
did my. I did like my DNA test, and then so I got my ethnicity background, and then I took those results, like all the genomes and stuff like that, genotypes, and then I put those into another site where it would basically look at your genes and then say if you're more susceptible to this or that. Like,
was it Genetic Genie?
it was called. Oh, dang! It was not that one. It was
Oh, okay.
what was it called? I'm sorry.
I did genetic genie. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, it was one of those for sure. I actually made a video about it on my channel, but it was so funny because it was saying that for me in particular that I am someone that wouldn't go towards sweet foods. I'm not someone who would be overweight. I'm not somebody, but it did say that I would smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol, which I don't do either of those. So it's like, so I think it's like environmental factors as well. But it did mention that there was a gene for overeating and obesity and stuff like that. I don't remember because that was so long ago when I recorded that video, but apparently it's out there. So I think it's like it's your genes and your environmental factors that play into how you're going to end up. Because obviously I wasn't a chain smoker. My mom and my dad were, but I was in school, they taught me like about the dangers of that. And so I actually ended up hating cigarettes, and I still do to this day, and things like that. And so I would like throw away my mom's cigarettes and stuff like that. So I think that's the environmental factor, but I possibly could have like that addictive gene that would find myself wanting to smoke cigarettes. So maybe there is something like that for overeating as well and obesity.
Well, and also, we have to consider the epigenetic factors as well. Things that they're in our genes, but then our parents or even grandparents did things that kind of modified our genes a little bit, modified like which genes were expressed. It's so complicated. Like I am not a genetics person by any stretch of the imagination. But I have a cousin who is. She's over in the UK, and she's like a geneticist.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I would love to talk to her at length about some of this stuff. But
oh yeah, I would.
But the fact that we have all this information and we have all these big scientists, and we still don't understand, like people still do not understand, and people like even like doctors and scientists, they're not in agreement on this stuff, just shows you how complicated it all is.
Well, it takes forever for the medical community to catch up.
It really does.
Doesn't it also just say that we're all just individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that plays in.
I'm curious to see, though, if he brings up, and I haven't really listened to him or I haven't read the rest of his book, but I'm curious to see if he brings up what commonalities he brings up.
Yeah.
As far as how our bodies actually function. Because I know that in general, our bodies do function the same. We have the same,
right, organs and blood systems and all that. Yeah, hormones.
Otherwise, and I'm sure Kim can relate being another nurse, is that otherwise you couldn't have protocols that would work for the most people in the hospital if your body didn't generally work the same. So I'm curious to see what he comes up with. And I'm sure there's all the individual variables that are part of it. But I'm curious to see if there's like something, what commonality he.
And I feel like there has to be some answers. Like I'm just chomping at the bit.
Because if there is nothing in common, then there is no answer other than just experiment on yourself.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that because the cover, it says why intermittent fasting is the key to controlling your weight. I think that's going to come into play later. I don't know anything about Dr. Fung.
I was gonna say there has to be something to do with fasting, because like that's his thing, does he like the keto diet? Yeah. Does he probably like the carnivore also? Sure. But his thing is intermittent fasting.
Right.
And I think that's probably where a lot of our answers lie. And which I think we can all probably attest to that just by a little experiments we've done on ourselves too. But is it a point where you need to start the fasting? Like, do you do like the steak and butter gang do and get to that, just really prime yourself up first, and then, that's my question, and then start fasting.
I personally don't like fasting. I just want to eat until I'm satisfied. That's why I love carnivore, and even keto was like that as well. Not as much, because I still had like some lingering addiction things with like keto pizza and all that stuff, not real whole food.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But carnivore kind of like solved that for me. So I'd be interested to see what he says, because fasting is not for me.
I feel like carnivore kind of automatically has me intermittent fasting
Mhm.
when I'm listening
Yeah.
to my hunger, because I just don't get hungry.
And they call it fasting mimicking, because
Mhm.
it does a lot of the same things to your body that fasting does,
Yeah,
So
yeah, very
I
true.
just couldn't do the apps. I would just like stare and be like, okay, I have 1 hour left and then I can eat. And I would just like cry to myself, please let me eat. That was bad.
Have any of you ever tried to do a 3-day fast or anything like that?
no, just the sardine fast, which is not actually a fast because you're eating,
Yeah.
but
I
I
tried
guess
and I didn't make it past the second day, but that was not before. I wasn't doing carnivore back then. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
day 2 was brutal.
yeah, I'm
Like
sure.
I'd learned about intermittent fasting before I learned about carnivore, because I was following, are you guys familiar with Dr. Mindy Pels?
I've heard
I'm
of her.
not.
She's amazing.
Vaguely, yeah.
She's amazing. But I was following her, and she really focuses a lot on women. And she has a book about, getting women through menopause and how utilizing intermittent fasting. But I started learning about it from her. And it was she actually did a podcast with Paul Saladino. And that's how I learned about carnivore.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I don't know how it would be doing a longer fast on carnivore. I haven't even tried yet. Might
I
be
did
easier.
I've done 24-hour
I've
fasts
done
like
those,
a
yeah.
lot, but not even really trying. Just usually it would be when I worked third shift and I was working and just busy working, not really eating, and then I was sleeping, and then I would wake up and I'd have to go do something real quick, and then it was kind of like, oh, I haven't eaten in 24 hours. Um, and I feel like that was good for my body, but I don't like to fast intentionally unless my body's going for it.
Mhm.
Um, I think that with carnivore, a lot of times you fast just not even trying because you're just not hungry. But if you are hungry, I think that you should eat. I mean, that's just my opinion, but we'll see what Dr. Fung has to say about it, I'm sure.
I have a feeling I kind of know what I've been exposed to some of his stuff. Um, like he has a blog and stuff that I had read like back when I first started researching like low carb and stuff. He was one of the first doctors that I had found, along with like Michael Eads. But I'm not sure if that's going to be like the main premise of this book or not. But I'm thinking he's going to be talking about insulin and the role that it plays, because I know he's a nephrologist. And, most people who have kidney problems, type 2 diabetes is the main cause
Yeah.
of that. So I'm thinking that insulin, and I have not read ahead. Matter of fact, I'm just going to fess up. I finished the last chapter about 5 minutes before I put the log on. So,
It was
Me
fresh in your
too,
head.
because I listened to it 3 times. I listened to it the first time, just kind of like get a general idea. Then I listened to it again and try to pay a little bit more attention. And then the third time I take notes, but I only
mhm.
got notes on chapters 3 and 4 because I'm like running out of time. So I had to put it on speed up.
Uh-huh.
I put it on like 1.5.
Well, I
Yep.
mean, at the end of chapter 5, he left us hanging, asking
Mhm.
what is leptin resistance. And I had never
Yeah.
heard of
Yep.
leptin resistance
I
before.
know. It's like, what in the world?
So
You
I'm
can
like,
have resistance to all your hormones or what?
well, yeah, that's a really valid question, because it is another hormone. And if we have resistance to it, how many other hormones could we have resistance to?
Exactly. Well, does anybody have anything else to add? We're right at an hour, and
We
I'm
did
very
it.
proud of us. We did it. We did it. We
We
did
stayed on
I
it.
got a
I
track.
tell you
question.
what, I'm glad we picked this book, and I'm glad you
Me
asked me
too.
to join in, because this
Aw.
has been really informative, and I've enjoyed talking about it, and it makes me think.
It really makes me think when I bounce it off of you guys too, and y'all tell what you got from the book, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I had almost totally forgot that part, and you know, you
Mhm.
pointed out. So, Bubba, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, my question is when you're talking about young people and being obese and stuff like that, and what was kind of, me sitting back here, as I'm listening, I'm thinking, I'm just wondering if there's any studies done on cortisol levels and stuff when people are addicted to their cell phones and playing video games and stuff like that, what relationship it's got to do with obesity or even the opposite direction. I was I
Yeah.
That's an
was
interesting thought because
I,
the adrenaline's going and they're
Yeah.
getting the cortisol's up when they're
And they
playing all
say
the video
any stress on your body, whether even good or bad, can raise your cortisol.
hmm
So, you know,
yeah,
that's
like I find myself when I'm under a lot of stress, like I've been under a lot of stress lately, and I had a massive gout attack this week,
Mm.
and
Sorry to hear that.
I was in pretty much in bed for about 4 days until the meds uh, kicked in, and it was absolutely just vile. It was in my ankle and in my whole foot, and but I really believe your stress, your hormonal levels, your food, your stress is going to dictate what you're actually going to want to put into your mouth, right? It's quite something. I was grabbing a coffee where I do my research at Starbucks, of course, with my AirPod, and I started talking to the young gals working there, and because the new Starbucks is right by a high school, and there's a store beside it called Quality Foods. And the one thing I've noticed, which I find extremely disturbing, if you go in about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, there's a massive lineup of high school students pounding energy drinks for their
mm,
breakfast. And they're
Yeah.
going into Starbucks twice a day. And the gals were telling me that, they're not allowed to say anything to people or these young people, but they're not just getting a small drink. They're getting like $7 drinks here that are just loaded with sugar.
yeah, upwards of like 1,000 calories.
And they admit that it's their breakfast and their parents are dropping them off there. It totally blows my mind. I mean, one
And
gal
their
was
parents are
actually,
probably drinking them too, honestly, like I
Well, yeah,
would.
well,
probably.
one gal actually told me there's some lady who brings like her 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, orders an espresso and puts some of the espresso in a cup of ice and gives it to her 2-year-old.
Oh my
What?
God.
Yes.
Espresso? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
You would think that
So
could like kill a child,
they
honestly.
are
What?
actually they're actually like absolutely they were telling me these stories, and it
Mm.
was absolutely I was just stunned. So I'm wondering the stuff that's going on now, what is going to happen to these young people in 10 to 20 years? I mean, I mean, what's going on with these flipping parents? I just
And
don't
what
get
the
it.
parents are eating, because when they're even like when the mother is even expecting the baby. I don't,
Hmm.
because they they
Hmm.
they, they think that vegetarianism is good for them, so they're not eating the fats and stuff like that. And so all of that combined, man, it's no wonder that some of these kids, well, a lot of these kids are just born. I mean, they're already at a deficit, and it's sad. Honestly.
When I got home today, and I started watching this thing on YouTube, and it's a fellow by the name of Martins Licis, and I guess you don't know who he is. He won the World's Strongest Man contest a couple times, and he's doing this video series where he goes around the world to document different strength things from history, like that are local to the culture and whatnot. And today's was a stone lifting out of Japan, which I didn't even know existed. My kids are half Japanese, and I'm watching this, and Martine's actually lifted the stone, put it on his shoulder. I think it was either 100, I think it was 180 kilograms. So it's about 420 pounds. And this stone had an engraving on it. When it was lifted, it was 150 years ago. And he said, whoever lifted this stone 150 years ago must have been absolute freaks. So my son watches the video. We're discussing it, and I said to him, I said, you know what that says to me? He goes, what? I said, somebody naturally can't do that unless you're an absolute freak. So I said, it says to me that the quality of food that they were eating at that time had to have been so superior than what we're eating today to have that type of strength. I think that's really a huge key with everything that's going on is not just the carbohydrates, but actually really the quality of the food that's really being grown and what we're consuming.
Yeah. Well, I use a body composition scale, and I've gained 17 pounds of, I think it's 17 pounds of muscle. And that's not working out. And I've actually gained a pound and 1.2 pounds of bone as well.
Wow.
And that's
So
just
Lynn, how
that's just the
does
food.
that work? I'm sorry to interrupt, but how does that actually work? Because I have one of those and I just don't get it. Like
There's an
how
app.
does
There's an app that comes with it. Did you download the app?
Yeah, I mean, I have it and it says what it says, but I'm like, how does it know that? Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't
Like, how
know.
does
How does
it
it
really
know that? Well,
It seems like, is it really accurate?
you know,
I mean,
I can't say 100% how accurate it is, although I did. There was a while where I actually, long before I was carnivore, I went to I was considering having gastric bypass surgery. I mean, my highest weight was 347 pounds, and I just broke below 300 few weeks ago, so that's good. But
yay.
I was considering having gastric bypass surgery, and they had the body composition scales there, and it's the electrodes on the bottom, and so they use them in these bariatric clinics, and it's the same, electrodes on the scale that they go through and they do something. I mean, we're all electric, so I guess it can maybe send this signal through your body, and it can detect based on feedback, kind of like an ultrasound, right? It sends out sound waves, and it can different tissues reflect
Or
it
kind
differently.
of like the pulse ox. Only it uses the little red light, but
Right. So,
I mean, I
it,
don't know.
it's probably more of an electromagnetic type thing where it just different tissues maybe send back different signals depending on
It,
their composition. That would be my
I always
guess.
I always wondered too about the hydration part of it. Like I'll use it right after I get out of the shower sometimes. And so my feet are actually wet on the bottom. So I'm like,
Right.
does it think I'm more hydrated today?
You gotta do it with dry, bare feet. And certain metrics, it only gives you a percentage. So I don't really pay too much close attention to that as much, unless it's real extreme, because it's going to fluctuate as your other metrics fluctuate. But yeah, so it's just the thing is that protein and the fat that I'm eating now is the building blocks for that muscle and bone. And I mean, I'm 55, so I want to gain bone. I don't want to end up with osteoporosis, and my medical condition makes me at a higher risk for that. Yeah, so the food quality of the food is really important. So,
It's everything, really.
getting stronger without working out.
Yeah, same. And am I the only one who never really thought about it this way? Like my mom would always tell me, you are what you eat. And if you eat sugar, you're going to feel awful and all this other stuff. And I never thought about it this way until I heard, I guess it was Dr. Berry say that, your skin is literally made of the building blocks that you give it by what you eat. I didn't think of it that way. I was just like, oh, my body's just going to take whatever crap I give it and I'm going to grow, but
Right.
that's literally what you're made of. It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
And
I guess
the
I
book
just didn't
breaks
understand what
down.
that did.
the book, you read earlier breaks down the food groups and what they actually break down to, and those are the building blocks of our body.
Mhm.
All right.
Isn't
Well,
this all just common sense?
I don't know about that, Bubba.
Well, if you look out in the world, no, because
Common
people
sense
don't
is
know.
not common.
Common sense is not common.
Well, I think we need to wrap up, guys. So we'll meet our time and everything. Not go over too much. And I've got to leave to take my boys to their lessons here in a few minutes, anyway. But everybody, go around real quick, and you want to say a little something about where you're at and who you are, and just maybe like a 10-second blurb.
Sure.
Bubba.
So I gotta go first, so I have to wake
Yep.
up now.
You
Oh,
gotta go.
damn. Well, I'm just me. It's just I'm just here trying to put the positive out for people. I'm gonna be like I think you watched my video this morning, didn't you, Kim?
Yes, I commented on
Yes.
it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be making some changes. I think that the diet's important, but I'm a lot more focused on the mental aspect on my journey and how people need to improve because there's not much sense going forward if you don't correct those poor behaviors because you're just going to go back. I know that from personal experience, but you got to start somewhere. So the diet is a good place to start, but we got to take care of all aspects of our health. That's about it.
Yeah, agree. All
I
right,
guess I'll go.
Ellie.
Sure. I'm Ellie, and I run a channel called Nourishment Redacted. I am sharing my experience on the carnivore diet while also talking about my success with keto. I've lost over 70 pounds with both diets. I've healed so many like panic attacks and mental illness. And overall, I feel like 100% better almost. So I'm doing carnivore for a year to just really give my body some nice healing. And hopefully by then I'll see where I want to go, more keto, probably keto, or maybe I want to stay carnivore. But I like to talk about children's health by introducing moms on my live stream, Mother Knows Best. And then I also have Linus Lifestyle Live, where we have a nice lady come on. Lynn's coming on next week. We have we have a fabulous lady come on and talk about their meat-based eating. And I just want to make carnivore realistic and simple and have fun along the way.
So I'm Lynn. I didn't put my channel in my description. I probably should have, but my channel is Midlife Carnivore. And I have been on the carnivore diet since the end of May of this year. And I went on it after I had to go on medical leave. I was a nurse and had to go on medical leave June of 2022 because I have mast cell activation syndrome. And I was pretty much unable to do anything except lay around for close to the year. And I had gained so much weight. I was already morbidly obese, but I gained even more weight. And I got up to about almost 340 pounds. And my back, my hip, my knee, I was just a mess. And I just got to the point, like we all do, where you get kind of desperate. Like, I'm going to be a cripple if I don't do something. And my nursing career is basically over. And so I decided to go on the carnivore diet. And I had been on it before for like 6 weeks and it worked. But I went off of it. So I've been on it now since end of May. And again, I use the body composition scale. So my scale is down, I think like 43 pounds, but my actual fat loss is like 60 pounds, a little over 60 pounds of fat loss so far. My body composition is changing. And with my channel, I'm just like, I started my channel to hold myself accountable. I had no clue whether anybody would subscribe. So I'm so grateful for the people who subscribed. And it's just been really motivating. The amazing feedback and the encouragement of the carnivore community just blows me away. And so I'm always so happy to meet other carnivores and find them very inspiring. And it's just so healing. I don't know yet. I found that I'm less reactive with my mast cell activation syndrome. So I think that the carnivore diet is helping. It's just a slow thing when it comes to that condition. So.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
I guess
Carrie?
it's me.
Yep.
All right. My channel is at my metamorphosis, all one word. And I know it's kind of a long word, but it's worth the effort. My channel is to encourage anybody who suffers or has suffered from anxiety, and it's just been a part of their life, to know that it doesn't have to be that way, that it doesn't have to stay there. I had started low carb in 2015 because I wanted to sort of head diabetes off at the pass. So I was not diabetic, but I saw how it affected my mother. And she passed away of congestive heart failure. So I just, after I went carnivore, the anxiety was gone. I mean, you would have never before that caught me on a YouTube channel, either on an interview or creating a channel of my own. And so one thing that did happen to me on carnivore, though, is I've always been a skinny mini. I had lost some weight when I started low carb in 2015, but when I actually went down to carnivore, I got down to 110 pounds at 5'9". So I have been tweaking my diet, and I've been doing what I call my little N equals 1, number equals 1, meaning me doing experiments on myself, tweaking things here and there, trying to incorporate like body weight exercises and that kind of thing in order to see if I can get some shape. And I've also started talking about other things that we can do to sort of get back to the roots of our ancestors and getting more at one with nature and with community and that kind of thing. And so I just did a video about meditation, because I know it's a daunting thing, because how do you think of nothing, right? But it's really not as hard as you think, and it is very relaxing. So anyway, that's what's going on with me. And I'm so glad you invited me to be on here. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. So I really appreciate you guys coming on, and just to let everybody know, I'm Kim. I've changed my name to Nurse Butter, but I'm usually Nurse Kim. So right now it's at Nurse Butter. We'll see if I keep that or if I go back to Nurse Kim. Who knows?
Nurse Butter is awesome. I was about to say.
I kind of thought it was awesome too, and
Yes.
there's a story behind it. So, but anyway, so I'd love for anybody who wants to come over and come to my channel and join in the fun. And right now I'm doing the book club every Sunday at 5 Eastern Standard Time. And then I usually try to get at least one video through the week. So love to have you. And that's about all I've got. So anybody else have anything else before we head out?
No,
I just want to say thank you, and I'm so fortunate to have such lovely ladies to be on YouTube with, right?
Thank you
Aw,
for being
thank you.
our man.
It's nice, because you know what I really like about this group
What's
is
that?
everybody's so respectful. That's very important,
That's so
Right.
true.
right?
Yeah,
It's-
it sure is.
It's what's been lost a lot in society, right?
Yeah, definitely. So
All right. Any last words? Ellie, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say goodnight.
Okay. I'll see you guys, and everybody have a good night.
yep,
Right.
you too.
Bye,
Good night.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.